Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good merry dinner time. Hi. Welcome to part 2 of How to Play Like Mr. Jimi Hendrix. In this video I'm going to show you a couple more things to do clean wise, kind of like Jimmy's clean Curtis Mayfield kind of styles, I'd say. So I'm going to show you a few more little double stops, little twiddle bits, and how to kind of like incorporate them into kind of like, you know, major and minor chords basically, and that, you know, and also how Jimmy, I'm going to talk how Jimmy played chords and the way his hand was, so when you're watching him in the future and trying to figure something out what he's doing, you know what he's doing, so it's not as confusing, because Jimmy had a bit of a funny way of playing chords. So, let's get into it, shall we? Okie dokie, so first little Hendrix doodle I'd like to show you today is this one. And you find that in like songs like, you know, Little Wing, Boulder's Love, live version of Hey Joe. He does it in the live version of Hey Joe, and it's a really nice thing to incorporate over a major chord. So basically, this is coming over an A major when I play it right. So what you're doing, basically, and I say it's important that you use your thumb to fret the bass note in this, because otherwise your hand ends up in this position, and that's, I mean, you can see kind of the angle of your wrist. Hopefully, that is not a good angle for your wrist to be at trying to do this thing. It's gonna hurt your wrist. So, I say just try and get your thumb over the top just enough to, I say, kill the A string and fret the low E string on the 5th fret. And then what you're doing with your first and your second finger is your first finger frets the 4th fret on the G string, and your second finger frets the B string on the 5th fret. So you get that sound. And you don't have to vibrato it, I'm just doing it out of habit. And then what you're doing with your other two fingers is, first off, you're hammering on with your ring finger on your 6th fret on the G string. And I say it's really important to keep that finger down and that note ringing out. So it's a hammer on, and then it's a hammer on again, and a pull off. And then you reach up with your little finger to your 7th fret on your D string. So that note there, and then to finish it off, you just hammer on again to the 6th fret on your G string. So really, really slow. One more time. And I say, when you add that bass note in, it kind of gives those notes context. That'll work over any major chord, so you can kind of like run up with that. So if you've got like a G major and an A major in your chord progression in a song or your own song or a Hendrix song, you can do that. So you can kind of go. And it's a really nice thing to incorporate in your own style as well. Okay, so that's the first one. I say, hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. I've got the camera in as close as I can get it without it being all and rubbish looking. So I hope you're able to see what I'm doing, and I say that's the first little twiddle. So let's move on to the second one I want to show you today. Okay, so the second twiddle I want to show you is just basically exactly the same thing, but in this one we're not using the little finger to reach up there. We're just doing this one instead. Very simple this one is, so same exact thing as I've shown you, but all you're doing this time is just hammering on to the 6th fret on your G string, hammering on twice, 3 times, so it's like, so you hammer on twice and then it's just you play the strings open again, so you hammer on, then hammer on again, and then just play those 2 notes alone, and again that works over that. Really slow. One more time. And I say that that bass note's important, as it gives it context, and also that note on your B string on your 5th fret is important as well, because it gives you that kind of Hendrixy double stop sound. So that's another one I want to show you. Next one I want to show you is kind of using that same kind of thing I showed you in the first video, kind of like that house shape I showed you, which is my amazing explanation of that. So, and then you'll find this one in Boulder's Love and Little Wing, and as I say, all over Hendrix's clean playing. So, yeah, so let's show you that one now. Okay, so next one I want to show you is this one. Which again is it's just so good with Hendrixy, and again you find this in Boulder's Love a lot, because Boulder's Love I think is like the best song to listen to and analyse and learn for those kind of like, you know, classic Hendrix clean kind of double stop twiddly bits. So what you're doing here is, I say, same thing again. We're not moving out of A major, and again, bearing in mind that this will work over any major chord. So it doesn't matter if it's an A major, G major, F sharp major, or whatever. These shapes will work over an A, as long as you've got your bass note as a major chord that you're playing over. These will work. They won't work over a minor, but we'll get to minors in a minute. So this is what you're doing. Basically, I say, fretting the 5th fret with your thumb on the low E, and then with your first finger you're barring the bottom 2 strings, so the B and the E on the 5th fret. And then what you're doing is you're hammering on to the 7th fret on the B string. So like that. And again, very important, keep that high string ringing out, that high E ringing out. Then you move up to that shape I just showed you. So that. Then that one. Then you finish off with your little finger. There's also variations of that. I think I've kind of shown that in a different way as well. So you can do that, which is basically incorporating that. I think that was the first one I showed you. So yeah. So you can incorporate that. You can also do. You can also hammer onto the high E string instead of the B string. You can actually kind of incorporate them all. So there are a couple of like little major things that Jimmy would use, and I say that shape, and I say having your thumb over, like those shapes there, they're so kind of they're so usable over clean, as I say, over a major clean kind of sound. So you can, you know, practice kind of incorporate them into your own kind of playing. So if you've got a chord progression going, say G major, A major, B minor, say for instance, just kind of something simple, you can kind of like do your kind of G. When you go to A, you can incorporate some of these. There's all sorts of different rhythms and little doodly bits you can kind of figure out there. So basically what I want to show you is just kind of like some basic things, and then kind of like I'd like you to kind of go away and kind of like, you know, develop your own kind of rhythms and your own kind of ways of doing it, because you can do so much with them. I mean, you can do it like that, like, you know, that way, or you can go. So much you can do with it. So yeah, basically just like play around with it really, and I say just, you know, just sit down with your guitar and just have fun with it. So next one I want to show you is kind of like a little kind of chord exercise, and this is quite a kind of a, well, it's a good thing to kind of get your little finger working. So I'm going to show you that now. Okay, so sticking in the key of A major, I want to show you this little exercise. Basically all I'm doing is I'm holding down an A major chord, I'm fretting, I'm not playing the A string though, because Jimmy would very, very rarely ever, well, I don't think he ever really played the A string when he was doing like, you know, a chord like this, that has its root on the low E string, so let's say. So what I'm doing is I'm fretting the, say, you know, the low E string, 5th fret with my thumb, killing the A string with my thumb, then I've got my ring finger on the 7th fret D string, middle finger on the 6th fret G string, and then I'm barring the bottom, the B and the E strings with my first finger on the 5th fret. And what I'm doing is basically I'm moving my little finger up from a B string to from the high E string, sorry, to a B string to the G string. And you can do this in all different ways. You can walk it up and then walk it down. You can kind of like do 2 beats on each kind of thing. You can do all sorts of different things, but it's a good little exercise to kind of sit there, and it's very musical as well, especially if you move it around. Like if I move from A major to G major, and back again, and keep doing that, you know, it's very musical. So it's just kind of a good thing to get your little finger going. You know, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing there, but it is very simple. As I say, you're just moving that little finger up and down those things. The whole shape doesn't move, it's just this that's creating variations. You know, and hammer-ons and pull-offs and all sorts of stuff. So that's quite a good little exercise to do to kind of get your little finger moving, and you will kind of need to be able to use your little finger for a lot of Hendrix stuff, because it does require you to kind of like, you know, especially, well, if you've got big hands you might not need to, but like, you know, if you've got kind of like, you know, medium-sized hands, you do need to be able to use your little fingers to be able to reach some of these things. Jimmy had huge hands, so you don't see him really use his little finger a great deal, but it's because he had massive hands, so, you know, the guitar neck was just dwarfed by it. So so that's another exercise I want to show you. And so now I'm going to move on to kind of some of the minor kind of like little diddly bits that he would do. Stuff like that, really. And so I just want to explain about, show a bit of that. So let's do that now. Okie dokie, so minor noodly bits and twiddly bits. Like I said in the first video, his minor stuff came out of a minor pentatonic scale. So if you know your minor pentatonic scale, I need to say, if you've seen the first episode, you'll know what I mean by that. And if you haven't seen the first episode, please go and watch that. All will become clear. So so what you can do with the minor ones, again I'm going to stick in A, is if you fret, like I say, the low E string again on the 5th fret of your A note, you can kind of do these. And all that is, all those little twiddles are coming out of A minor pentatonic, and they're just hammer-ons and pull-offs, just like I think I explained in the first video. But basically, I'll just go over it again quickly. So what you're doing is you're hammering on, and then you're pulling off that finger, and then you resolve it there. So it's 5th fret to the 8th fret, and then you've resolved it there on the 5th fret on your G string. And you do that same shape up all strings. So you can kind of start on your high E string, 5th to 8th, and resolving it on the 5th there, same thing there. And then when you get to kind of your G and your B, your D and your G strings, you change shape and it becomes a bit more compacted, obviously to correspond with the minor scale. Yeah, that one Jimmy wouldn't do, because you'd have to, you know, it's not really, that doesn't really sound Hendrixy. So I would kind of stop there on the D and the A. Yeah, that kind of thing. So and again, it'd be really, what's really helpful is to sit down with your guitar and just kind of go around these shapes. Just kind of like, you know, just you know, if you know, I say, if you know your minor pentatonic, every note will work. And I say, so fret your low A on your low E string, the A note on your low E string, and just kind of like play around with it, kind of. And say, go up, go down, try hammer-ons, try pull-offs, just try hammering on. You know, all sorts of things, and say, hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing, and hopefully kind of like, you know, kind of incorporate that as well, and through what you can see me doing. So, you know, so I say, I mean, they're the kind of like the basic things, and there's another one, which I'm not going to explain why this one works at this point in time, or you don't need to really know it. It just does. There's another quite cool Hendrix little twiddle which you can do is this. So what you're doing here is you're starting out, you're barring your B and E strings on the 8th fret, and you're doing that shape I just showed you in the majors. So it's the exact same thing I just showed you on the major. And then you're moving up to here. So I can't do it with 2 fingers, Django, around that style, so you might be able to see a bit better. I can't really do this one with 2 fingers. And then this one. That was harder than it looks, doing 2 fingers. Peace. Yeah, so, you know, hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing, and I have to say, there's nothing better than just sitting down and just playing around with this stuff, and kind of like, because those notes, and I say, like I explained in the first video, if you stick to those notes, you can't go wrong. You really can't. It's so... they're always notes will work. It's very kind of like straightforward if you kind of put it into that context. So they're just kind of like a couple little more kind of clean little bits. I hope that's kind of been informative. So I just want to talk about one more thing before we go on to talking about Jimmy's chord shapes and stuff. So yeah, let's talk about this last little doodly bit. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is how to string all these little doodly bits together. And the chord progression I'm going to use for this, to string them all together, is going to be G major, A major, and B minor. Exactly the same chord progression as I said. And what I'm going to do, on the G major, I'm going to do that walking up little finger thing. So it's going to be that thing. When I get to the A major, it's going to be that kind of thing. So the first things I showed you in this video. And then when I got to the B minor, I'm just going to do that thing out of the B minor pentatonic scale. So it'll sound something like this. So it's quite cool to sit down with a simple chord progression like that, say 3 chords, nothing, you know, you don't have to go crazy, you don't have to have like a million chords and add 7ths and 9ths in. Just keep it simple, just kind of majors and minors. And just kind of like play around with those little things. As I say, that little technique there with your little finger, those kind of... and then those. You know, those kind of things. And another thing that I thought of actually before I end this one is another one you can do is go back to that shape, the first one I showed you, and slide these 2 fingers up. So you're basically sliding them up a whole one fret, 2 frets, sorry. So you're sliding from the 4th and the 5th to the 6th and the 7th, and that's very Hendrixy. Very kind of floaty, One Rainy Wish kind of sound. So that's another thing, you know, and there is nothing better than just sitting around and plinking around with this stuff. There really isn't, and it's the best way to learn it, really. I mean, I could show you all this till the cows come home, but if you don't put it into a practical sense like anything on guitar, it's not going to sink in as well. So, you know, when you're just sat watching TV or just sat around with a guitar in your hand or whatever, just sit there, just kind of going around simple chord progressions and just, you know, I say 3 chords, 2 chords even. Just playing around. You know, and eventually it all starts to sink in, and these shapes and all these double stops become very, very kind of second nature, really. You can just pick up guitar and just kind of like, you know, well, play around with it, really. It's a really lovely style to play because you are kind of basically doing bass, rhythm, and lead all in the same kind of thing. So it's really cool, very melodic sounding, really nice. So, so yeah. So I say, let's I'm going to move on now, and we're going to talk about how Jimmy would do his chord shapes, because they are a little bit confusing when you see him play live. It is a bit funny. So let's talk about some of the common chords, shapes and chords that Jimmy would use. Okay, so common Jimmy shapes. What would he do? Well, there's quite a lot of footage of Jimmy playing, and some of the times it's quite hard to distinguish what he's doing because he's got such big hands. It's kind of like hard to kind of like, you know, see what he's doing. So I'm here to clear it up for you. If Jimmy was playing, like, say, if you know that chord, so that's an A major, what he would do is he wouldn't play that shape at all. This shape never, I don't think that shape ever was in Jimi Hendrix's chord vocabulary. I've never seen him do it. If he did, I never saw it. So what he would do to play this shape is, as I say earlier on, is he would do this shape. So thumb over the top, killing the A string with the thumb as well. So you've got the A note, that. So he would play that shape, and I say that gives him the ability to kind of like, you know, have freedom to move his little finger or his ring finger. Kind of, it gives you that comfortable ability to do those, as I just showed you. So that's kind of one shape Jimmy used, and you see him doing it, those great close-ups of Woodstock. To do the next shape, which I suppose in kind of like, you know, technical terms is this one, or, you know, that. So another major chord, that's D major. What Jimmy would do for this one is he would actually just have his hand like that. And it looked like he wasn't doing anything. So if Jimmy's hand's in that shape, it's like it'll be like a chord with can't talk today. It would be a chord with a bass note on the A string. So it'd be like, you know, if that's a C, that's a D. So it'd be like down there. So that's what he would do. And you see him playing, I think it's the Beat Club footage, just black and white footage of him doing Wind Cries Mary, and he's got a shape like that and he's moving it. And also there's a bit on Woodstock, in the Woodstock improvisation, where he's going. Those kind of things. And you see him, he's just got his hand like this. So if he's doing a shape like this, it's based off a root note of the low E string. If he's doing a shape like that, where it looks like he's doing nothing at all, is based off a root note on the A string. So say low E string, A string, low E string, A string. So that's kind of clears it up. So they're the kind of shapes he would use. And I say he would have his thumb over the top, and I developed my own kind of way of playing that. My ring finger actually pins my little finger to the fretboard. So, but again, that's my own way of learning. I learned to do that myself. That's something that I developed, and I don't know how or when or whatever, but that's how way I do it. And it can be a bit confusing sometimes when I'm trying to teach, because I do play my thumb over the top a lot. So if I'm trying to show, it does get a bit confusing sometimes. So hopefully this clears it up if I end up doing it like by habit or whatnot. Another shape that Jimmy uses is the Hendrix chord, which is the Purple Haze chord. You know that one. So basically what you got there, you've got your low E string, then you're fretting your 7th fret on your A string, D string, 6th fret, and back to the 7th fret, G string, and then your little finger frets the 8th fret on your B string. And that's the Hendrix chord. And I say I will talk about that again in another video, because I want to talk about Purple Haze, but I say that's a whole different video. So so that's the Hendrix chord. So that's another shape he would use, you'd see him doing. Other than that, that's pretty much it, really. There's the Chuck Berry shape, which he did in Johnny Be Good, but I say he only did that once, to my knowledge. Yeah, so other than that, they're the basic kind of shapes. So say just to recap, that's the Hendrix chord, which is an E7 sharp 9. Just so you know, you can wow people with it. I know an E7 sharp 9, but it's a lot better. It's cooler to call it a Hendrix chord. So it's a great chord as well. So yeah, and say if he's doing a shape like that, root note on the low E string, shape like that, it's a root note on the A string. So yeah. So before I finish too, I just want to talk about Jimmy's how we set up his guitars as well. So that's it for the kind of teaching portion of this little lesson on part 2. I hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've learned some stuff. And I say just go away and kind of doodle with it, really, just have fun with it, and just, you know, and try and incorporate it into your own kind of playing as well. If you've got a song, try kind of you know, or any song really, just kind of try and incorporate those kind of things on a major or on a minor kind of thing. Okay, so I just want to quickly talk about Jimmy, the way he'd set up his guitars and string gauge and all that kind of stuff now. So let's talk about that for the ending of this video. Okay. Okay, just to finish off this video, I want to talk quickly about how Jimmy would set up his Strats. This took a lot of research just to find out what he did, but it kind of makes sense really when you think about it. So string-wise, Jimmy used gauge 9 strings. He used 9s to 38s, which are actually smaller than the strings we use now. And I say if you do watch Woodstock footage, you can see the string, especially the low E string, are super thin. So that's another thing to bear in mind. Jimmy didn't use big strings. He used gauge 9s, and I say it was the 9 to 38. I don't actually know the actual gauges. I do believe, but again, I'm not 100% confident and sure of this, because there's a lot of conflicting messages. But they were Fender rock and roll strings he used more than often, which was kind of like the string at the time. There's also roto sound. You've seen pictures of him roto sound, but I'm not sure he used them. I don't know. There's rumour that he used Diodario, but I don't know. There's a lot of rumours, you know. Somebody will probably say somewhere he used Ernie Ball Cobalt strings, you know, just because. But what string manufacturer it was doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter was they were gauge 9s, and you can see, especially on the Woodstock footage, they were 9s to 38s. They're really thin strings. They weren't big strings at all. Pickup wise, Jimmy didn't really have his pickups high. And he also had his action fairly low. He didn't have a particularly high action on his guitars at all, and again you can see at Woodstock there's not a great deal there for him to press down. I mean, on a Strat you need a certain high action because of the curved fretboard, but it wasn't stupidly high. Pickup heights, they weren't high either. They were fairly lowish, really. They weren't wound up to get the most out of the pickup. They were fairly lowish, kind of medium, kind of high. Tremolo is very important. Jimmy would use 5 springs. I only use 3 because well, it's just the way this guitar works. But all his guitars had 5 springs. His black Strat, his white Strat, his 60s, his pre-CBS Strats, the other ones he'd break, all sorts of guitars. They would all have 5 springs in them, and what he would do is he would screw the claws up all the way, and because he had 5 springs, the claw would be about here, but he would screw it in all the way, so the tremolo system was flush to the body, so there would be no up movement, it would all be down, so you could only push it down, and that would help him with tuning when he was doing all his dive bombs. And that's kind of the way he would set his tremolo up. He would only go down because he can get those severe, real low, crazy low end strings, and he can do all this kind of stuff. All Jimi Hendrix kind of sound, but it does help with tuning. I mean, it might be out of tune. It's out of tune a bit, but not enough to really kind of. Just the G string was a bit flat, and I say you would see him retuning, but so it does help with tuning. So that's the way I kind of have my guitar set up. But so it is flush to the body. There's no play, there's no up motion at all. And also with that, it gives you the ability to kind of drone strings and bend strings, whereas if you've got a floating tremolo, if you bend a string, your low E string is going to go whoa, out of tune. This doesn't. So it is flush to the body. There's no play, there's no up motion at all. And also with that, it gives you the ability to kind of drone strings and bend strings, whereas if you've got a floating tremolo, if you bend a string, your low E string is going to go whoa, out of tune. This doesn't. string till it chokes out, and that low E string will not warble out of place. So that's kind of how Jimmy would set up his guitar. Really, it's kind of like, you know, tremolo system flush, pickups medium high, action fairly lowish, and I say gauge 9, 38 strings. So it's kind of like so it's like a gauge 8 on top, and then a gauge 9 on. So kind of like 8s on the E, A, and D, and then 9s on the G, B, and E. So that's how kind of Jimmy would set up his guitars. Just for him, really. I say he did on his black Strat actually been carved out a bit here, so we could get to the truss rod a bit easier. You can see that at the Isle of Wight Festival and stuff, because, you know, with these vintage Strats and vintage style Strats, you do have to take a neck off to adjust truss rod, which is awkward. But again, that's another video about setting up guitars in general. But yeah, so hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned enough to kind of, like, you know, hope you've learned something you can go away and, like, you know, practice and play with. And in the next video, I'm going to teach you how to play around with the intro of Little Wing. So I'm basically going to teach you how to play Little Wing. But what I want to talk about and show you is kind of like all the things I've just kind of shown you, how to incorporate them into Little Wing and to create your own way of playing it. Because Jimmy never played that song the same way twice. The studio version is different to his live version, and then one live version will be different to the other live version. So that's the kind of thing I want to kind of get through, is really is kind of like just find your own way of playing Jimmy's songs and play around with it the way you want to play around it. Have the freedom to play around with it. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again in about 2 weeks. See you later.